Recently, I was discussing with a friend the classic elements of the first Superman film franchise. The biggest difference from then and now in how films are made is in how they chose to use the runtime. And the most interesting part about this is how the more the original Superman films moved closer toward how films are made today, they suffered. Superman films progressively got worse the more they moved away from the fantastic and the grand scale of the very elements that make up Superman's mythology. It's fantastic! Is how Lex Luthor reacts to the very existence of Superman's Fortress of Solitude in the second film. That is so important in itself. Technically, it's all just icy white on white, except that it's absolutely not. It's from another world, a gigantic structure in the middle of a nearly unreachable ice wasteland, and it's made of enormous crystals. Here, on Earth, and it's home to Superman. That's absolutely incredible and fantastical. And Luthor's reaction to that is brilliant. If you miss something like that when you're making a film and it just becomes, oh yeah, the fortress place, you've lost everything. The excitement is gone, the audience will soon follow, and that's exactly what happened. Modern films have come close several times to hitting the mark, yet you can again see how they tailed off in the same way just as quickly. The more events in the films began to be overlooked. Man of Steel started with grand, sweeping sequences, shaking entire planets as they occur, to the absolutely dead nothing of Superman walking through Congress in Dawn of Justice, on top of all the earth shaking events of Man of Steel. This is a visitor from another world with ultra powered abilities, steeped in controversy and anxiety, and he's just strolling through the halls of Congress like he's a lost tourist. A few of the extras stop to look over at him for moments on the screen, but they're far too fleeting. In the chamber, people are joking around and smiling and don't break from that as Superman steps up to the podium. It was supposed to be this critical scene in a film critical to your franchise's success, and those little things matter just as much as the big things because they add up. And maybe added up to a doomed franchise by the time we get to Suicide Squad. And the Batman, confronts a family in an alley of all places, and the scene takes place with none of the circumstance that something like that should come with anytime Batman, who was literally and figuratively created in an alleyway tragedy, anytime that character returns to an alley of any kind, it has to take place with a lot more than what was presented in Suicide Squad. Even though I don't think the film is as bad as people say, or it's been panned as for sure, that is still a monumental oversight that started, or I guess got really bad in Dawn of Justice, but also started in Man of Steel beforehand. Keep film epic would be a banner that I would put up in my office and on the set. If I was in charge of the DC films, I would have that plastered everywhere. A theme to remember to keep even the smallest moments in line with the characters you're working with. These characters are larger than life itself. Even in lesser films, when you keep things official, it works to your benefit. Perfect example, Superman 3. It's the last truly great Superman film. And what saved it from some of the lesser moments were scenes like the chemical plant fire. It's one of the best scenes in film history. Things seem under control until people become trapped on a rooftop, and then Superman springs into action, turning a giant ventilation tube into an escape for the people to slide down. Brilliant, comic book madness, the best of comic books that you would see in any of the great comic books, especially the ones that Superman started with. Awesome moment. Superman immediately goes after that, right for the last employee that's left in the building. And this is what I mean by attention to detail. This is a man inside of a burning building, and Superman, the Superman, walks in, and the man is unfazed, doesn't even break his concentration from the chemicals that he's there to oversee. It's how it works both ways. If every time Superman shows up, it has to be a big deal because it should be a big deal. It has to be this earth-shattering, enormous event anytime Superman does something, especially interacting with other people. Because then, when you flip it to have somebody who's unfazed by Superman, what in the world is that person dealing with? Or what are they caught up in that they're unmoved and unfazed by the presence of Superman? Absolutely should catch your attention as a film viewer and increases the stakes of what you're going to learn, a few moments later in that sequence. Because the worker, that is, sets the stakes by explaining how extremely dangerous and tricky the chemicals are to maintain. Right as fire immediately explodes into the room, raising the stakes even further, pressing the time to save everyone. And as the gentleman explained, not just save everyone there, but save the entire eastern United States. Superman again springs into action, interrupted by Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. He's about to be engulfed by fire. And like a boss, Superman walks right through the fire, right to Jimmy, and like it's nothing to him, because it isn't. Just a quick thing in between Superman moving that again shows off the character, because the fire is not gonna faze him at all. Next, when the firefighters lose their water supply, Superman literally speeds up and away with the music perfectly queued up to heighten the lack of time on their side till that fire joins with the chemicals, and then things are going to get really bad. It's a little choice here, but it's no small element. When Superman lands at the lake, he's going to freeze over the lake and then take the frozen lake to the fire to try to quell the situation there with the flames. But the music isn't a generic piece of music. It's a piece that is played in the two previous movies during moments when Kryptonians were on Earth. So the other three Kryptonians from the second film, or Superman himself, and when the Fortress of Solitude was created and first literally rose on Earth. Remember how I mentioned just how fantastical and grand the very idea of the fortress is? Brilliant to use the same music here, because what Superman is doing is so otherworldly and incredible. It's frightening. The sheer ability to do that, to have that kind of power in a being, in a person, in just one man. Again, similar to what they were trying to do with Dawn of Justice, but it's in the middle of this convoluted sequence of events that's going on, and it's a television news interview about somebody else talking basically separate from where Superman is, about, to have that kind of power. It's not bad. I don't think that film either is really as bad as people say it is, but here it is done quickly, and it's with action. It's done with things taking place in a critical sequence, and with Superman himself being on screen, and also showing you firsthand, instead of talking about it, showing you firsthand. And because again, it's staggering, it's frightening that something like that could take place, and the music conveys that perfectly before shifting to another brilliant piece of music that rearranges the Superman theme, now to highlight that they're out of time. This is coming to an end one way or the other. Holding off on that triumphant, assuring Superman music that we all know and love. I mean, it's not only for all the layers that we're talking about here, but it's also just classy filmmaking. You also have to finish strong, and that scene does, after the frozen lake is melted by the fire's heat. the chemical temperatures are all leveled back to safety by this. The chemical employee who has he's stayed there, he's shown going in his reaction from this would be final moments to the realization that Superman has just done what should be impossible. And he's saved an entire continent. The celebrating firefighters outside of the building from the other perspective, I mean, they're looking up in the sky at Superman as he's flying away. And of course, one of them, the fire chief, comments, that man's a miracle. They're in total awe. That is a Superman film. That is DC Comics greatness. All of it under 5 minutes. I mean, the sequence is longer, but the moments I described to you are around 5 minutes of screen time. That leaves you with the rest of the film. You have the rest of the film to work with. And if your scenes are as efficient like that one, they can make up for any elements that may not work. That's why these films are remembered and celebrated still. Compare that to Man of Steel's never-ending climax and this similar, seemingly unending hollowness of the last act of Dawn of Justice. Modern DC films are not awful or unwatchable. They do, however, drag on and leave you feeling like they're a tedious chore to revisit. And that's where they fail. While even what many would consider to be a subpar Superman film in Superman 3, it's overall remembered fondly. I mean, I thought about it so much that I looked it up. I looked up that clip, actually. And that scene, and on just the top 2 video options alone, there were 2 million views. 2 million views for a 37-year-old scene. All the views were me, of course. No, just kidding. Only half. But no, really. And in comparison, again, I just happened to look up that I was curious. So I looked up that the Dawn of Justice sequence from when they're in the Congress, where Superman's wife said he was strolling through there. And I think it's about 2.5 million views on that one. So supposedly it has all the ingredients that everybody says makes a good popular film by today's standards, and yet it's basically got only 500,000 more views than this original Superman 3 scene from 83. Oh, and again, that says a lot. Put all the right elements together in anything, and you have something that will stand the test of time. And whoever winds up in charge of the next string of DC films, they can join that great history DC has if they only look back to the special heritage, starting with Superman.